Well, both the victim and the shooter from Portland on Saturday, the shooting in which a Patriot Prayer member was killed by what appeared to be an Antifa thug with no provocation, which I couldn't confirm yesterday, but seemed to be the case based on the video I had seen. I can now almost 100% confirm that this guy did not start any fights, that he was merely ambushed by an Antifa member, and that is confirmed. And the guy's name who lost his life was, at first we were hearing his name was Jay Bishop. Now we're hearing that his name is Aaron Danielson, and Jay is a nickname. So I don't know if Bishop is also a nickname, but we'll just call him, Aaron Danielson, or Jay for short. And so everyone should know Jay's name. Jay is a man who did nothing wrong. He was someone who just apparently had the wrong political beliefs. He wasn't a political extremist of any kind. He supported a candidate from one of the two major parties. I mean, the incumbent president. That's a pretty mainstream view. He was a member of Patriot Prayer, which is a very vanilla organization that just basically has public prayer gatherings in Portland where they pray for America and their political allies. It's not a group that should offend any reasonable people who understand that, their side exists, that, regular Republican people live in America. But for those in Portland, such as this, this domestic terrorist guy who has been identified by 4chan and now the Oregonian and other sources as Michael Reinhoel, I believe. It's some kind of German name, so it's a little, or Reinl. Again, forgive me, my German is non-existent, so I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but it is kind of funny, his German name, he's all white, and he's got a tattoo on his neck, but it's not a swastika tattoo, and he is bald, so it kind of looks like a skinhead, but instead of having a swastika tattoo on his neck, he has nothing else but the Black Power fist. How's that for irony? Well, this guy, we now know from Instagram posts, and I think maybe a Facebook page too. I was seeing this, but a screenshot of an Instagram post was being passed around in which he talks about how, the revolution is important and people protesting now have no idea where this is going to end up, which is actually pretty, I agree with that. The people protesting don't know where things are going to get up. That is step one. If you actually are going to have some sort of violent communist revolution, you need to protest the current system, but then things slowly get out of hand and get violent. And in this post, he says, I'm 100% Antifa. I'm willing to fight and die for my brothers and sisters. And so it's pretty clear that this guy sees himself as a soldier of the revolution, and he went out there and took down, one of the enemy. He is probably proud of what he did. If, he still feels today the same way he felt a few months ago, and considering that he's still out in the streets, and he was out there with a gun, and he killed somebody who was on the other side, it seems pretty clear to me that that post would reflect his current way of thinking. Now, we also know that this Michael guy, who, I don't want to push his identity necessarily or fame for him as much as I want to do for that Aaron Danielson kid that got killed, or not kid, I guess he was older. But that guy should be remembered. His life should not be forgotten, and his death should not be in vain, because he did absolutely nothing wrong, and he died simply for believing something that just about half of this country believes in. It's not something that anyone should ever have to die over. Your stupid partisan politics. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's not that big of a difference between the two parties anyway. So it doesn't bother me really which one of them you happen to support. You can still be either a good person or a bad person on your own merits. So anyway, back to the subject of this Michael Reinhoel guy, or Reinhoel, or whatever. He was arrested previously in early July during the riots at the courthouse. Remember that, when Antifa was sieging the courthouse and Trump had to send in his secret police that the folks on the left and the mainstream Democrats even were condemning as terrible. Oh my gosh, how do you do that? Well, this guy was there. He had a gun. He was disarmed by the police, arrested, and then summarily released. Well, surprise, surprise, here he was back again out in the streets with his gun, looking for fresh meat. And there's a new video that came out that was posted by Ian Miles Chungus. It's a pretty good video. And again, I don't think I can link to this stuff, so just go to Ian Miles Chung's Twitter feed if you want to find it. Because I think that YouTube probably will get mad at me if I post links to tweets with death in them. But there is a video from a guy. Unfortunately, he's holding his phone down by the side, so you don't see what happens, but you can hear perfectly clearly. The audio is perfect on it, of this presumably this Michael guy, shouting, "Hey, we got a couple of them. We got another one." And he didn't. People were saying that yesterday that it sounded like he was saying Trumper. Very clearly wasn't saying Trumper in this audio. He just was using generic terms like, one of them. But it was pretty clear that he looked at this Jay guy. He saw Jay's clothes. He was wearing a Patriot Prayer hat and had a thin blue line American flag patch, and said, hey, you are not an anti-fascist. That means you must be pro-fascist, and so I'm going to murder you. And so it was a pretty clear, cut and dry execution. There was no scuffle. There was no exchange of gunfire. There was no fist fight. It was just, I see you, you're dead. And so unlike Kyle Rittenhouse, this guy doesn't have a defense. The more evidence comes out, the worse it looks for him. And he is probably, unlike Kyle Rittenhouse, going to be convicted if there's a prosecutor that has the gumption to actually charge him. Now, I'm not entirely sure that he'll even be charged, based on what we've seen so far, but perhaps this case is so egregious that even though the prosecutors have been letting the Antifa folks, get away scot-free, including this man, for the whole time these riots have been going on, charging them with nothing, perhaps now that he's escalated it to such a degree, they will finally, try and lock him in prison. Now, the police are looking for this guy. I don't know if they've captured him yet, but his family has spoken out to the media and to the police about it. Apparently, he hasn't spoken to any of his family in like 3 years. They had some kind of big fight, which, surprise, surprise, this guy seems nuts. So, and the kinds of people who end up with Antifa and things like that are not exactly folks who are all put together and mentally stable to begin with. These groups seem to attract folks who already have a few screws loose. Still waiting, by the way, to hear any Democrats condemn this and to say that things have gone too far. We got some kind of generic statement from both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris saying that, well, violence is bad, but nothing specific about this case, about a Trump supporter being gunned down by people who supposedly would, or who presumably would rather see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House than, Donald Trump. We have not seen any Democrats, reflect on their commitment to protect Antifa and whatever other left-wing rioters, such as, the Black Lives Matter folks, from any kind of prosecution. Their very soft stance, their coddling of these people. There's no sense that they feel that, their actions enabled this in any way. Whereas it seems pretty obvious to me that had you stopped the more petty violence, or I don't even know if you'd call it petty violence, but the less serious violence of when people were just torching buildings and destroying cities, rather than actually murdering human beings, that maybe things wouldn't have escalated to such a degree. But because at every step of escalation, the local leaders of these cities have done nothing, particularly in Portland, because they have tried their best to appease the mob and to coddle them. The mob has become emboldened, and that's why we saw the entirety of the Antifa mob in Portland celebrating the death of Mr. Aaron Danielson, or Jay, as he liked to be called. There was no sense amongst the group that this fellow Michael was just some lone wolf or a lone nut who went out and acted on his own and killed somebody. Everybody embraced his actions. They applauded his actions. And you know, I have to say, I'm not exactly a big fan of Nick Fuentes, but in this case, I thought he had perhaps the best take on the whole situation on Twitter, in which he said that anarcho-tyranny is when you either get killed in the street, like Jay Bishop or Aaron Danielson, whatever you want to call him, you know, because you get attacked by a violent mob and you're not armed. And it's also when if you choose to defend yourself, like Kyle Rittenhouse did, the state comes in and charges you with murder. So when you're not armed, the state doesn't protect you. And if you choose to arm yourself and to protect yourself from the mob, well, then the state is going to come after you. So it's a lose-lose situation, which, you know, I thought that was a very insightful way of looking at this whole situation. The juxtaposition between the two really is remarkable. Either you lay down and die, or the state will do everything they can to make sure that you know, the rest of your time on this earth is not pleasant. And if people feel like those are their only two options, they're not going to be happy. The right wing in this country will not tolerate that forever. After this, what I would be sure of is that more people on the right are going to show up to these events armed. Because if Saturday made anything clear, it's that having the wrong political beliefs in America will lead, you know, to a direct threat to your safety. You can't merely walk around in America and profess to support the incumbent president, apparently, without risking yourself being shot. And, you know, that's pretty remarkable, considering that on that same day on Saturday, when you had the pro-Trump caravan going through downtown Portland, I thought they took a remarkably restrained approach to defending themselves, and I was actually very impressed. And so what they did, instead of marching where people could reach down and you know, and grab them, they drove through with lifted trucks, which gave them a bit of a high ground advantage because they're above the crowd, and they were carrying bear mace, so that if anyone got near their vehicles, they would just mace them. But if you know that your assailants will not be armed merely with their fists or with bats, but rather with firearms, well, then mace isn't going to cut it. Now, is it? If everybody brings a mace to a gunfight, you know how that's going to turn out. And so now, I think that you're going to have a lot more people say, no, you know what? I need to be fully armed when I go to these events. It is not safe to demonstrate my support for the current administration, for a mainstream political candidate, without being properly armed to defend myself from the mob. And that is why my thumbnail a couple days ago for the video on this, or was it yesterday? Gosh, it might have been. I can't remember now. But the thumbnail was "Democracy is dead," and that's true. You have, you know, and I never really believed in democracy to begin with, but you know, you can't have any semblance of of democratic political institutions if people, you know, are killed for having the wrong ideas, for not even being outside of the Overton window, for merely supporting the opposition or the incumbent. If we can't have even two sides in American politics, then there is no democratic order, period. It looks like we've got a long, violent road ahead to November the 3rd. But I think that's all I have to say for today. If you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.